Hey everyone, welcome back to Anvil of Doom Miniatures. My name is Deets and I hope you've all been well. I've had a really busy few weeks here. I've been planning a wedding and a honeymoon, traveling for work non-stop, and I've also been impatiently waiting for my Empire order, which still hasn't arrived yet. I really wanted to paint an Empire war wagon in Avalanche colors before I went away on my honeymoon, but due to a natural disaster, which seems to be getting more and more common up here where I live in the middle of nowhere, my order was unfortunately delayed, so I won't have time to do that. Now we all go through periods where hobby time seems kind of like a luxury, and I did have some time later on this week to finally paint something. So while I was looking for my next miniature to paint, I decided that I needed to paint something that would make me feel really good and kind of give me that warm and fuzzy feeling. Now last year my New Year's resolution was to read some more books and get involved in some more Warhammer Fantasy lore, and I've always been intrigued by the Gotrek and Felix novels, so I finally bit the bullet and started Troll Slayer. And from there, I kind of hammered my way through the next 8 books where I'm up to Manslayer. And to say I've just been enjoying them is really an understatement. I can't put them down. So for this video, I pulled out 2 very special minis from my collection, the true heroes of the old world, Gotrek and Felix. I was gifted these last year for my birthday by my wonderful fiance, who, as you're probably watching this, will be my wife. And I thought for this video, as I'm painting, we'd kind of go through the first 8 books, kind of give you a bit of a review, my thoughts about everything, and what I loved about the books, what I didn't really like about the books. But if you haven't read these books, I'll try not to go into too much spoilery stuff. I really recommend you pick them up and get into them because, as I said, they are pretty great. And if you have read all the Gotrek and Felix novels, maybe you can sit back, relax, reminisce on the good old times, and watch me paint 2 of the best and classic miniatures Warhammer has ever produced. Anyway, let's get into it. I just want to start out and say these books might not be for everyone, as I feel they really act as a gateway into the old world setting and might not be that truly deep and suspenseful bestseller that you may be used to. But what these books have in spades is adventure, world building, and a lot of combat, and I guess if you're into Warhammer, then that ticks all the boxes. The first book in this epic tale kicks off with Troll Slayer, written by William King. The first 7 books were written by King, and there was a change of author, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Troll Slayer starts with Gotrek and Felix already traveling around the old world together, but establishes pretty quickly in passing how they met during the window tax riots, where Gotrek saves Felix from persecution for rebelling against the state, which leads Gotrek to killing a bunch of Reichsguard knights, a drunken promise to document Gotrek's doom, and then the duo go on the run from the authorities. I was a bit surprised by this intro and how brief it was. I thought the book was going to get a bit more involved into this story, but that's okay because it only picks up from here. The first book by King is more like a series of journal entries pulled together from Felix's point of view, and he is the scribe who agreed to write Gotrek's glorious doom after all, so that makes sense. One of the best parts of Troll Slayer is how it establishes how fragile Felix is compared to Gotrek. Right from the start, it always feels like Felix is struggling to survive in conflicts they come across, while Gotrek is dropping anyone who gets in his way with his magical axe with ease. There's one scene when they're in the mountains heading to a dwarven hold, and they come to the aid of some men who are under attack from some greenskins, and the whole scene is basically Felix clawing for survival, taking on a single orc, and after a long struggle where he nearly drowns as well, he only just survives. That scene really stuck out to me, and it told me a lot about Felix, that he is no warrior. But in saying this, as the series progresses, you do start to see Felix grow stronger and more capable in a fight. Troll Slayer has all sorts of other great bits of Warhammer lore in it, and it goes into how Gotrek loses his eye and how Felix gets his hands on his dragon-hilted rune sword. It's a good start to the series, but I feel like Gotrek and Felix really picks up the pace after this book. And that's where Skaven Slayer comes in, and I have to say this is one of my favourite reads of the Gotrek and Felix series so far, as we learn the ins and outs of a grim city in the Empire and how Skaven society and social classes work. The story starts out with Gotrek and Felix working as basically sewer security guards for the city watch in Nuln. Obviously working in the sewers means you're going to run into some rats, and this is where one of the best characters in Warhammer Fantasy makes his appearance, the bad boy of Skaven himself, Grey Seer Thanquol. This crazy rat wants to take over Nuln, kill all the man things, and prove to the Council of 13 that he's worthy. Thanquol is cunning, conniving, and hilarious as they come. The way he's written by King is absolutely spot on, and he brings the Skaven to life. The way each Skaven warlord tries to outdo one another and stab their rivals in the back, which eventually leads to their undoing, is hilarious. And one of my favourite scenes is where Gotrek and Felix visit the Gardens of Moor, kind of like a graveyard, and confront some disgusting plague monks. I was enjoying this book so much and I didn't want it to end because I wanted more of Thanquol, but the great news is he obviously comes back later on in the series. The epilogue of Skaven Slayer also gives you a kind of end credit scene type of thing that makes you want to keep reading, and thank God, because the next book, Daemon Slayer, is pretty damn epic as well. This book introduces us to a bunch of weird and wonderful dwarfs, my favourite being the Slayer named Snorri Nosebiter, and some interesting human characters like the wizard Max Schreiber and Felix's new Kislevite love interest, Ulrika Magdova Stragov. And all of these characters become series regulars and carry on through to many more of the books to come. And there's also one important character who I forgot to mention who's introduced, and that is Malachi McCason, a Dwarf Slayer engineer who's created the technical marvel, the Spirit of Grumney, a huge airship or a massive blimp to us manlings. Using this ship, the dwarfs and Felix head off to fly over the Chaos Waste in the north to try and track down a lost dwarven hold of Carrick Dum that was left behind as the Chaos Hordes moved down from the north ages ago. They also have a brief stopover in Kislev, which is great because it does a lot of world building there as well. Now obviously you can't walk across the Chaos Waste as there is too much warpstone in the air which will mutate you, so the group decide to fly there on the Spirit of Grumney, but are being spied on by one of Thanquil's minions. This book really goes into why the Chaos armies are so dangerous and how many wicked Chaos worshipping men, mutants and beastmen populate the wastes. Plus they are all massing and heading somewhere under one banner for another plot point for later. Gotrek and Felix's gang eventually arrive at the Dwarven Hold and manage to track down the survivors, but they're confronted by a nightmarish Chaos Demon and have one hell of a fight where lots of dwarves go down. It gets pretty desperate in the depths of this hold, and the final battle between Gotrek, Felix and the King Dwarf, I forgot his name, sorry about that, is pretty epic and probably one of the best fights in the series. But they do manage to escape on the Spirit of Grumney, and this is where Dragon Slayer begins. Each novel in the Gotrek and Felix series usually starts with some sort of battle, and Dragon Slayer is no different. I feel like it's William King's way of buttering us up as he really knows his audience well. This next book does feel kind of like a bridge between two bigger story arcs, but it really is another solid entry about the group heading to safety and trying to warn the Empire and the Dwarves about the armies of chaos massing out their doorstep. An invasion is about to happen and it's not looking good for the land south of the Chaos Wastes. It's probably one of the more adventurous books as Gotrek and Felix and Ulrika and Max and the dwarfs limp the airship to Carrick Cadron after being attacked by a chaos-twisted dragon whose mind's warped by some bald chaos twin sorcerers who pop up again a little bit later. Now the reason why I like this book is because we dive into a bit more of the Slayer lore and we pick up a bunch of new Slayer characters who, you guessed it, go on a quest to slay a dragon. Now there are a lot of key plot points which I'm just going to skip over, but they do meet the Slayer King, which is pretty cool. And this new bunch of Slayers are the highlight of this book, especially Bjorni Bjornsson, as he's a bit of a perv and sex pest who has a few great lines, and it really did make me laugh. This book also dives into a bit of the love triangle that Felix, Ulrika and Max have going on. But from time to time I do get a little bit annoyed at Felix because he does whinge a lot and is fairly emotional. But the more I reflect on this, it's really what makes Felix Felix. Gotrek on the other hand does seem to be a little bit one-dimensional from time to time, as he's just there to kill things. As the books do go on, you do get a little bit more depth to Gotrek, but when there's a heap of characters around, he tends to just fade into the background. But in saying that, it does keep a bit of mystery around Gotrek because at this point in the story, you really don't know his backstory and why he's so powerful and what the mystery behind his axe is. Now we're getting to the halfway point of the books and painting these guys, so if you would, please hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, and also maybe share this video with a friend. I'd really appreciate it. And also don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, let's get back into it. I just want to add this in here as well before we go on, but I have to say that the audiobooks for this series are top tier and are narrated by Jonathan Keeble, and his narration is pure 10 out of 10 to me. These books can be hard to find, so don't be afraid to dive into the audiobooks. I've just listened to a few of them and Jonathan Keeble is a god. The next book is Beast Slayer, and this is the culmination of previous adventures into the Chaos Wastes, and this book is the big battle we've all been waiting for. The Chaos Horde is about to make it to Prague, and the fight for this city begins. There's cults within the walls, witch hunters, corruption, Gotrek's past is finally revealed, and there's a few huge battles with demon siege towers, lots of magic, and plenty of bloodshed. I think that's what William King does really well with these books. He balances all of these moving parts but slowly builds to that big payoff. I feel like it would be easy to make these plot points become sloppy, and sometimes they are a bit rushed, but all in all they are fairly solid. Beast Slayer finishes with a huge Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Battle for Pelennor Field style battle where a lot of great characters meet their ends. I really did love this book. It felt kind of gritty as well. It was another solid entry into the series. Next is Vampire Slayer, and this one is one of my favorites because it kind of gets all spooky and goes into the classic vampire tropes. I was reading this one around Halloween last year, so it probably made the read even better for me. After the Battle of Prague, Felix's now ex-misso Ulrika gets captured by a handsome man who smells a lot like cinnamon, and you guessed it, he's a vampire. This vampire then flees Prague with his captive Ulrika and an amulet which he stole that originally belonged to Nagash that allows the user to control vampires. While this vampire is on the run, he's chased by Gotrek Felix, Max Schreiber, the wizard, who at this point is madly in love with Ulrika, Ulrika's Kislev boyar father, and some winged lancers. What's great about this book is the Sylvanian lore, and Nagash has a few mentions as well, which is always fun because I picture him in my head as that OG mini. It's also nice to have a bit of a change in enemies as well, because all the Chaos Warriors and Beastmen were getting a little bit boring to me. The undead hordes of zombies and ghouls were a welcome change, and in the end of Vampire Slayer, it's a bit more bleak compared to the other books, and this bleakness goes right into William King's last Gotrek and Felix novel, Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer starts off with the breakup of the original team, which I loved, and Gotrek and Felix gets thrown into an old one realm gate type of thing, and we have to say goodbye to Max Schreiber and Snorri Nosebiter. I'm not going to lie, this made me pretty sad because I love that dwarf. This is the book where the High Elves finally make their appearance, and if you're a High Elf simp like me, it's great news. The mage of all mages, Teclis, rocks up to save the day and is aided by Gotrek and Felix. The dynamic between the elf, the man, the dwarf is pretty funny, and there's a lot of bickering that goes on, and it's just the way it should be. Now this book is a little bit trippy at times, especially when they're in the old one's underground realm tunnel pathway thing, but as the heroes escape this realm, they find themselves in Albion of all places, and with the help of the locals, they fight some orcs and chaos, and you know they save the day. This book had me in two minds because it's a 10 out of 10 when Teclis is around, and I love the Albion setting and how they get into the ancient history of the old world, but it does feel like the end was rushed, and I wanted King to end his run of Gotrek and Felix novels on a high. Overall, I still love this one though. Now we move on to the first Gotrek and Felix book by the new author Nathan Long, and this one is Orc Slayer. I'm not going to lie, I was a bit scared to get into this book because I heard a lot of people complain about the new author, but as I dived in, I did notice some changes in the writing style, but the majority of it did hold up for me. Sometimes I got a bit lost with certain details, and there were a couple of what felt like 90s action hero moments from Gotrek, but this book had a lot more character development for Gotrek, which is a nice change. There's also a 20-year time jump from Giant Slayer to Orc Slayer, which blew my mind. There's 20 years of Gotrek and Felix adventuring around Araby, Ind, and Cathay, which has not been written about. GW, please get someone to come back and write these stories because I feel like there's some good potential stories there. This book starts off with a naval battle against some orcs as Gotrek and Felix return to the old world, and it gave me Man of War vibes, which is really fun. As a new wave of chaos has come down from the north, the lands of the old world are in dismay, as the majority of dwarven and armies of man have gone north to fight, which has made a power vacuum for the orcs to come in and take one of Gotrek's old mates' dwarven holds. This book mixes up the traditional Gotrek and Felix formula as it's more of a mystery, and at one point I was thinking, are the chorfs behind this? But as the plot unravels, things definitely get darker and darker, and I felt that the dwarfs in this world were a dying breed. What this book does well also is get into the mind of the dwarves, their thought processes, grudges, and how they feel about men. Felix is often looked down upon, even though to us he is the voice of reason. Orc Slayer made dwarves feel more alien to me. They don't understand how men's minds work and vice versa. We all know that dwarves hold on to a grudge to the bitter end, and in this book you really see it. If you wave some gold in their face, they will literally drop what they are doing, even if what they're doing means saving countless Dowie lives. All in all, it's not a bad read, and it's definitely worthy of Gotrek and Felix's name. And that's the first 8 books in the tale of Gotrek and Felix, and I now know why people love these two characters. They brought me a lot of joy. Again, if you're new to the old world setting, start the audiobook because it will make you appreciate the old world even more. Sorry for all the rambling about these books. As you can tell, I truly do love them, but these guys are pretty much done. All I did was paint the bases Goblin Green, and here they are. Here are the heroes of the old world, Gotrek and Felix. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video, guys. I really appreciate it. And maybe let me know down in the comments below what your favorite Gotrek and Felix novel is. I'd really like to know. And maybe don't give me any spoilers of the books to come, because I'm looking forward to reading those on the plane very soon. I have to say a massive thank you to my Patreon members for all the support you guys give me. I really appreciate it. And you help me make videos like this for everyone else. So thank you very much. If you want to join the Anvil of Doom Patreon, the link is in the bio, and I look forward to chatting with you in the Discord. Anyway, guys, I'm out of here. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.